Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really honored to be here. Thank you to Philip and the Venture Atlanta team for inviting me. My life is about supporting tech entrepreneurs and doing anything I can to help entrepreneurs build amazing companies. And I especially like to do it in phenomenal cities like Atlanta. Atlanta actually played a really big role in our journey at ExactTarget. Our early game plan around building market share and building a market presence was to hire really talented people in markets outside of the major metro areas. It was kind of an unobvious move of expansion. So some of our earliest hires were actually in Atlanta. And we built relationships from the ground up, grassroots marketing and selling. Some of our early relationships were with the Chamber and with Technology Association of Georgia, who became early clients. And through the viralness of those relationships, we ultimately had the privilege of serving Home Depot and Carter's and so many great companies here in the Atlanta market. So it's a real honor for me to be here today, and Atlanta holds a real special place in my heart. Today I'm going to speak about building category leaders in SaaS, and I'd like to cover kind of three sections. First, I'll share our journey at ExactTarget. Second, I'd like to tell you more about High Alpha, a new venture studio that we're building in Indianapolis to pioneer a new model of entrepreneurship. And then three, based on my collective experience, I thought I'd share some observations of behaviors and characteristics that I see in great SaaS leaders. So how does that sound? You guys with me? Sorry. All right, let's do it. Fantastic. So as entrepreneurs and investors, we're all looking for the big idea. And I want to share a little bit of the story about how ExactTarget came to light. I attended graduate school at the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern from '96 to '99 and had the opportunity to study entrepreneurship and internet business models and really immerse myself in all things tech. And it's where I fell in love with tech and entrepreneurship and just had to be a tech entrepreneur upon graduation. Our capstone course, which I still think about today, was to study the Silicon Valley ecosystem and bring recommendations back to the city of Chicago and Mayor Daley on how to fuel tech innovation in Chicago in the Midwest under the code name Silicon Prairie. 20 years later, I'm really still doing the same thing, focusing on how to drive entrepreneurship in markets often that are outside the Bay Area, although I love the Bay Area for so many reasons. I'm actually heading back to Indianapolis tonight, and tomorrow we'll be joining Steve Case and the Rise of the Rest tour when they drop into Indianapolis, and we have a day of celebrating entrepreneurship in Indianapolis, which I'm really looking forward to. So our big idea for ExactTarget was to help marketers leverage the power of the internet. And we studied database marketing and understood a lot about marketing in an offline world, and we felt like we could apply those principles to the online world. And fortunately, we had some good instincts, many of which came from my co-founder, Chris Baggett. These were kind of the four elements that inspired us to say, we think we've got a really, really strong business model. First, we're going to catch the wave of digital marketing. We also were fortunate to catch the wave of cloud computing. Second, we built a platform that served small businesses to large enterprises, so we felt like the total market opportunity was very compelling. Third, and I think this is important for entrepreneurs to really internalize, you have to understand your value proposition and what the ROI of your platform is going to be for your customers. Ideally, you're helping them drive revenue, lower expenses, or perhaps both. And we felt like in the world of digital marketing, we're helping clients with bidirectional ROI. And then fourth, subscription-based model, the early advent of SaaS, became the eighth wonder of the world. Recurring revenue in SaaS businesses are wonderful for the customer and really great for the entrepreneur and the investors. So we felt like we had all the pieces in place for a dream business model. Next, we decided to build a company in Indianapolis, which was a non-obvious move. I married into this wonderful family from Indy, so that destiny was set. But to kind of take you back to 2000, 2001, we were three first-time entrepreneurs, three first-time software entrepreneurs. None of us had a technical background. We were raising capital and starting our company after the internet bubble had burst, and we were going to build a company in Indiana. Good luck. So we were scrappy. We bootstrapped the company. and one thing led to another, and we built a company that was really special. And it turned out that Indianapolis became one of our superpowers. Indianapolis became one of the big advantages we had against the competitors that were largely based on the coast. And these advantages, I think, really ring true for those entrepreneurs that are right here in Atlanta, starting with we had access to amazing talent in universities. In our case, we're an hour from Purdue, Indiana University, Rose-Hulman, Butler, close to Notre Dame. Talent is everything, and if you can win the hearts and the minds of young college graduates joining the workforce, that gives you a real leg up. Second was an affordability edge, and I'll talk more about how that has played a role in Salesforce's future expansion in Indianapolis, which is really a wonderful thing. Third is the opportunity to be big fish in a small pond. And we were fortunate in Indy that we had very hardworking employees that loved the company and never wanted to leave. So that employee loyalty and retention was a key ingredient of our success. And then lastly, we had incredible support from the city and the state. Ultimately, we built 2,000 high-tech, high-paying jobs right in the urban core of Indianapolis. And when you do that, the city and the state are cheering you on every step of the way. So we had amazing support. Our user conference was called Connections, and that was really the celebration of our community. At our peak, we had 6,000 or 7,000 digital marketers that came to Indy from all over the world to celebrate marketing and celebrate one another. And I'll talk more about our orange culture, but when I work with entrepreneurs and encourage them to think about building a culture, it's about building an organization that amazing people want to be a part of, including customers. And I think you know you have something special from a cultural perspective when your customers feel it. And our brand color and later our culture framework was called Orange, and Connections was really a celebration of everything that our people, our customers, and our partners stood for. For those of you early stage entrepreneurs, I strongly encourage you to lean in on user conferences. There's no better way to bring your entire community together and really inspire your team to think bigger and go faster than a user conference. We would think of it as a gigantic forcing function. It was really a forcing function around innovation and big thinking. And you see that at Salesforce. You also see that in earlier stage companies. You need milestones to really marshal your team to go above and beyond and think bigger and dream bigger. And user conferences can really be a magical way to accomplish that. Stacy was very involved with a company called HubSpot, which has just done an incredible job in the digital marketing space. Their user conference Inbound was a couple weeks ago, and they exceeded 20,000 attendees. Really remarkable. And their CEO, Brian, his opening keynote was really on the essence that it's never been easier to start a software company, but it's never been harder to scale a software company. And I really agree. I agree with that. With AWS and development frameworks and access to seed capital, it's not that difficult to get a new company rolling. What's really difficult is scaling your team, scaling your technology, bringing in the right investors. And we were fortunate at ExactTarget to have incredible investors like Stacy at Scale and Kobe and many others that are actually here today. But I thought I'd share how we thought about scale. We thought about scale really across three dimensions, and I think this applies to many software as a service companies. The first, could we build a platform that served small businesses all the way up to the biggest enterprises? That's really the democratization of software and the promise of cloud computing. In reality, it's extraordinarily difficult to do. How you build product management teams, development teams, sales orgs, customer success teams. It's very difficult to support the small mom and pop all the way up to the large enterprise. But if you can accomplish it, it's magical. It creates a tremendous market opportunity. And then there are a lot of hidden benefits also. Turns out marketers that worked for a small client of ours would leave and go join a big organization and pull us along. That's powerful. That's viral. Second, sometimes small companies become really, really large companies. One of our best stories was Groupon. Actually came in through our inside sales team. Very, very small client just getting started in the world of email. And over time, they actually grew to be our largest customer. So serving all segments for a SaaS company is an amazing growth lever. Second is multiple products. We started with permission-based email and then later evolved into mobile, social, web analytics, and we built a portfolio of product offerings. It's really challenging to become a multi-product company and be good at it, but that's imperative as you get larger as a company and you want to provide more value to your customers. And then third is geographic expansion. We built offices throughout the US, and then over time had offices in London, Paris, Munich, Sydney, Melbourne, Sao Paulo, Brazil, really all over the world. So those are the big growth levers that we thought about around scaling. How do you hold it all together? In our case, actually, when scale came into our life, we were about 300 employees, and we had a pretty good sense we were going to head up to 1,500 to 2,000 in a short window of time. And the ultimate fluid for scaling is culture. I really cared about building a company and organization that phenomenal people wanted to be a part of. And there was always kind of a vibe and an energy, and we're often complimented on our culture. Employees at ExactTarget are kind, they're hardworking, they care about the customer, they're competitive. There's a real energy and passion to what you're doing, but we could never quite put our finger on it. We couldn't really describe it. Our chief marketing officer, Tim Kopp, knocked on my door and said, Scott, I think we need to brand our culture. I think we need to build a culture framework. And I was skeptical. I was very worried it was going to feel like a big company initiative crammed down on our employees. But we talked it through, and we felt it was the right thing to do, and we developed Orange. And we just said our culture is orange. That's our brand color. Across the sea of software companies, we wanted to own the color orange. And we liked everything orange stood for. It's unique. No word rhymes with orange. It's happy. It's energetic. So it really became our brand color, but then we turned it inside, and it became our brand. And we started talking about marketing from the inside out. We started adding marketers into our HR department and used every interaction with our employees as an opportunity for celebration and inspiration. And one of the tools I used is actually in the upper left-hand corner. It was called my Friday Note. And today I see so many entrepreneurs and CEOs of our portfolio companies doing a dynamite job with weekly employee communications. Years ago, it wasn't so prevalent, and I thought I'd take a chance, knowing that we were going through this big scale period, and write a personal note to our team every week. And I wanted to share what I was doing, what I was thinking, where I was traveling, key milestones in the company, celebrate accomplishments throughout the organization. And we started that, and I really made a promise that was difficult to keep, but thankfully I kept it, that every Friday, rain or shine, the Friday note would hit your inbox. Also helped that we're an email marketing platform, so those emails had to look good. They had to have videos and links and pictures, but it became the tool for me to communicate with our employees and keep a one-to-one relationship going. So 5.5 years, we did not miss a Friday note. And then when Salesforce acquired us, I stayed for about a year. My kind of going away present to our employees was this book called 5 Years of Friday Notes. And it was really the kind of the historical archive of the journey we were on together. But the most powerful elements were that employees would write me notes and share what they liked, share frustrations, send me pictures and videos to try to get into the next Friday note. And it just, to me, was reinforcement that business is all about one-to-one relationships. It's all about caring for people in a really authentic and genuine way, and communication is a really important part of that. We did 6 acquisitions throughout our history. 3 were to expand geographically, where we acquired resellers in the UK, Australia, and Brazil. And then 3 were product expansion in the areas of social, predictive analytics, and then B2B marketing automation. And this is where my heart gets really, really big for Atlanta. How many of you are familiar with Pardot? Woo! How about a big round of applause for Pardot? And I hear David Cummings was not able to make it today, which means I can talk about him with no repercussions. So I'm excited about that. So we're building ExactTarget, and we thought of ourselves at the core as marketing automation. We were absolutely marketing automation, largely B2C marketing automation, but we were marketing automation. And board meeting after board meeting, board members would say, hey, Scott, when are we going to get into marketing automation? I'm like, what do you mean? We're all about marketing automation. And it turned out companies like Marketo, Eloqua, and Pardot had defined a brand new category of software. They owned it, and it was marketing automation, and it really was B2B marketing automation, lead nurturing, lead scoring, all the tools around turning leads into warm opportunities for your sales org. And we knew we had to move into the space. and we could never prioritize it high enough to build the technology, and the incumbents had a big head start. So we got introduced to Pardot, and we absolutely fell in love with the team. David Cummings and Adam Blitzer were running the company in just an extraordinary way, and we thought we were the kingpins in kindness and culture at ExactTarget. We had it figured out. We were from Indianapolis, kind-hearted, prioritized culture, and then we met the Pardot team, and they actually blew us out of the water. We had never seen anything like it. We met with the Pardot team, and their kindness and their intentionality around culture was unlike anything we had seen. Their three core values were positive, self-starting, and supportive. For a very small organization, they had benefits like a masseuse on staff. They paid for their employees to have their homes cleaned because they wanted them to feel good and feel organized and be able to focus on work and feel like they had good work-life balance. They had unlimited PTO before any companies had unlimited PTO. And we met with the Pardot team, and our first thought was, wow, they're nicer than we are. And like, wow, they care about culture more than we do. And it was unbelievable. So we were fortunate to acquire Pardot in fall of 2012, and then we were acquired by Salesforce about 15 months later. But what we learned from Pardot, what they did for our collective company was extraordinary, and it built my ties and personal connections into Atlanta that much deeper. And let's look at where Adam and David are today. Adam is literally running the entire sales cloud for Salesforce.com. He's one of their top executives. I'm so proud of him. And then David, turning right around and starting the Atlanta Tech Village and making big investments in so many of our software companies here in Atlanta. That's vision, that's boldness, and it just makes me feel so good to kind of be a small part of that, kind of up the supply chain. So how about a big round of applause for Pardot and David and everything that they've meant to Atlanta. So we really thought of culture as our competitive advantage, and that was one of the connection points that drew the Pardot team to us. So much that when we filed to go public, it was imperative that culture was in the S1. And for any of you that have gone through a go public S1 process, building this document is just absolutely brutal. It's 200 pages where every word is examined and examined again with a room full of investment bankers and lawyers. And it's very difficult to get softer topics like culture into the document. So early on, our banking team said, you know, that's nice, that's cute. Every company thinks they have a great culture. Probably not going to make it in the document, Scott, just so you know. And we didn't give up. We just said it is the competitive advantage of the company. It's what we stand for. It's what we're about. And what's going to be the driver for future success. How could we not talk about it? And thankfully, it made it in the document. The cover of the S1 was orange. I think one of the first times in history that an S1 document actually had color on the cover, on the front and the back. And then this was actually a slide we used in the IPO roadshow that I really, really loved. Basically sharing our NPS score for employees. 99.4% were proud to work at the company. 98.3% would recommend working here. And that had to be fact-checked in order to make sure it was really authentic and could go in the S1 document. Fun part of this slide, that VW Bug was actually the car of an employee of ours by the name of Nigel. He was our sales director in London. Didn't even tell me. Bought a VW, painted it orange, put the letters ExactTarget on it, and he drove it around town. I thought, goodness, he's more orange than I am. But that was a good indicator that we were doing something right from a culture perspective. We went public March 22nd, 2012 to be exact. It's an incredible day for me and the team, and we turned the NYSE orange in every way we could think of. Everyone working on the floor wore an orange jacket. We had orange carpet laid on the floor, and it was just a celebration of what we had accomplished and really a precursor to the next stage of growth that was ahead of us. We were public for 5 quarters, and life was good. We had done a couple acquisitions, including Pardot. We had kind of met and exceeded Wall Street guidance 5 quarters in a row, and then Salesforce came knocking on the door, and they had an even bigger vision than we did around the future of the marketing cloud, and felt that our being the database of record for marketers and our kind of multi-channel marketing technology was the right fit. And one thing led to another, and we got very, very excited about becoming a part of Salesforce. Financially, as Stacy said, the premium over where we've been trading was very substantial, which made me happy that Anyone who ever bought a share in ExactTarget turned out to be a profitable venture for them. And then my big hope was that Salesforce would invest in Indianapolis and our employees at a faster rate than we would have been able to as an independent company. And here we are 3 years later, and that's 4 years later, and it's happening in a huge way. The tallest building in Indianapolis has been called the Chase Tower for 20 years. It's now the Salesforce Tower. They just signed up for 800 new jobs, 500 new apprenticeships, and they're really the iconic company in our community, kind of fueling everything we do. So thank you for letting me share the ExactTarget story, and I hope for entrepreneurs and investors, there are a couple ingredients of the story that you find meaningful, and I think more than anything, if I can do it, trust me, all of you can do it, and probably can do it a whole lot better and a whole lot bigger. So the next chapter of my life is called High Alpha. We're a venture studio pioneering a new model of entrepreneurship, bringing together company creation and venture funding. And here's what the model looks like. We're 1 part startup studio and 1 part venture capital fund. And in markets in particular like Indianapolis that have kind of a shortage, let's say, of scale-up capital, this model we're finding is working really, really well. On the High Alpha Studio side, we have 25 employees, designers, developers, business analysts, experts in cloud and SaaS technology, and we look for new ideas. We start new cloud companies. On the High Alpha Capital side, we invest in those companies when we have product market fit and they're starting to scale, and then we also invest in other amazing companies all throughout North America that are in their Series A, Series B round, and these are B2B SaaS leaders and companies that are really, really scaling, where we think we can be a small part of their story and hopefully can be helpful given our ET and our Salesforce background. Our core values are dream big, expect more, and move fast. We're really optimizing around speed, and often these core values are in conflict with one another. Whenever I encourage entrepreneurs to build core values, I really try to challenge them to come up with values that are unique, help create and form the identity of their company, and often, if they're in tension with one another, that's a good thing. This is our ideation funnel. When you're in the business of starting new businesses, it's also good to have a forcing function and a methodology, and we built this methodology over the last 2 years. The idea funnel is always open. So any of you that have a compelling idea around a new cloud company, bring it on. But these are really the sources of new ideas, starting with just our own internal ideas. Having run big companies and small companies, having been in cloud computing for years, we see big opportunities and unmet needs in the market. Second, entrepreneurs and co-founders find us. In many ways, we're matchmaking ideas, co-founding teams, and capital, and we love it. We love it when entrepreneurs approach us with an idea that we might be able to work on together. This creates some fun experiences for me. I've been pitched by Uber drivers recently, both in Indy and San Francisco. And then 2 weeks ago, I have 4 daughters. My youngest daughter, who's 11, had a friend over for a little play date. And her friend went up to my wife and said, "Your husband's a shark on Shark Tank," which kind of cracked us up. You'll hear from the real shark tomorrow. And Mark Cuban and I don't have that much in common, although we both did attend Indiana University. So that's a good connection point. We work with our capital partners on new ideas. And then this is probably the biggest area of delight and surprise over the last 2 years of High Alpha is the opportunity to work with large companies that can't innovate fast enough. And they're hungry to run innovation cycles. They're hungry to look for new ideas. They're hungry to launch companies, often better outside their 4 walls than inside of a big company. So we're doing a lot of partnering with Global 2000 companies on how to innovate faster and looking for opportunities within their vertical to launch new companies together. This is our Sprint Week methodology, where we take our 3 or 4 best ideas and we run them through Sprint Week. 1 week internal business plan competition with a lot of rigor, a lot of energy, a few all-nighters sprinkled in, and we really, really bring these ideas to life with business plan, early customer development, financial models, brand, product design at a high fidelity, and then ultimately we pitch to one another and guests and decide which company to move forward. We move those companies forward, and then we provide them with a lot of love and support. We co-locate, we run all the back office functions, hiring, benefits, payroll. We put a lot of design resources into that MVP, And we really just try to accelerate the path that the entrepreneurs are taking and help these entrepreneurs focus on what they do best, building a great team, building a great product, and finding early customers. This is our portfolio, 2.5 years in, 9 high alpha studio companies, and 12 external investments. And I've got to share 2 of our external investments I'm absolutely most excited about are in the room today. Kyle Porter from Sales Loft and Eric Spett from Terminus. How about a big round of applause for those guys? Kyle and Eric, thank you for letting us be a small part of your journey. We're delighted to be investors and help these 2 amazing SaaS companies in Atlanta dominate their markets and build those next category-leading SaaS companies. The last section that I wanted to share are just some quick observations of characteristics and behaviors I've seen in great SaaS leaders. And this comes from working with entrepreneurs like Kyle and Eric and many others, and I thought I'd share 5 of them. I'll do it quickly, and then we're going to bring Stacy up on stage for some additional questions and dialogue. The first one is I find great SaaS leaders start with the end in mind. They have a vision for where they want to go and where the organization wants to go. And they're very good at painting that future state and then working their way back so they can be thinking very strategically about, do I have the right leadership team? Am I making the right investments in product? Are we an open platform that's going to help us build a partner ecosystem? Am I investing in go-to-market sales headcount soon enough, knowing the payoff is likely 18 to 24 months? And our investors, Scale in particular, helped me think 3-4 years into the future to really think about what does a dominant category leader look like, and then it provides amazing clarity 3 or 4 years earlier of what you need to be doing today to get yourself in the right position. Second, I find great SaaS leaders are always learning. They're always learning. And Kyle and Eric are actually 2 amazing examples. Eric recently sent me a note, hey, I'm heading to New York. Can you introduce me to any New York CEOs I could learn from? Yes, I love that. And Kyle just tweeted, the best business ROI is investing in people, but second best is investing in books. Right on. Learning, reading, building friendships, building mentors, always learning. And this never stops. One of the big lessons I learned from Mark Benioff was having a beginner's mind. And despite all of his success and the size of Salesforce, he's a consummate example of somebody always learning. My first one-on-one with Mark, he had just acquired ExactTarget. We're on this new journey together. I was a little intimidated, to be honest, having my first one-on-one with Mark. And I was meeting him at a hotel in Indianapolis. Ran over to the hotel, and Mark was nowhere to be found. So I'm looking, I'm waiting, can't find him. I run into his assistant, Joe, and Joe's like, hey, Scott, he's at the mall. And there's a Circle Center mall right in downtown Indianapolis. Go meet him at the mall, and you guys can do your one-on-one as you walk around the mall. And I'm like, really? So sure enough, I kind of hoofed it over to the mall, and Mark is in the AT&T store and had been there for 45 minutes having a dialogue with a salesperson on the floor about their connected home products. This young woman had zero idea that Mark was CEO of Salesforce, but it didn't matter. It was just a genuine, equal flow of information, and Mark wanted to learn everything he could about AT&T's connected home products. And that led to a lot of the IoT and connected product strategy at Salesforce. So you're never too successful or never too old to learn. Great CEOs are always learning. Third, and we talked quite a bit about this, but great SaaS leaders value team and culture above everything, and they understand that culture is always changing and very, very dynamic. Early on, at moments when we were going public or taking in a round of financing, I would often be asked, how are you going to preserve your culture? And I would always answer it legitimately about what I was going to do to preserve culture, which was not the right answer. The later realization I had is that culture is always changing. It's organic. It's always flowing, and there's always opportunity to make it better. So great CEOs understand that culture is always evolving. You have to own it, be intentional about it, be authentic about it, and if you get it right, it'll be absolutely magical for the company. Fourth, great SaaS leaders are both optimistic and never satisfied. I find the best CEOs and entrepreneurs are always positive and optimistic, but they're honest. and they're also never satisfied. They have a healthy discontent of always wanting something to be a little bit better, and they can deliver that to their teams and motivate their teams in a professional and productive way, but their teams know we're always striving for more. We're always raising the bar. That could be around product stability, could be around innovation, could be around the website, could be around hitting sales numbers. And then last, I find great SaaS leaders give back. They realize that the business is about creating a better world. They're community-minded. They tap into the hearts and souls of their employees, and they look to make a big dent in the universe, in their community, across the industry, and connect into causes that their employees really, really care about. So thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to speak with you today. We're going to click into a quick fireside chat with Stacy. So thank you very much, and please welcome Stacy back to the stage.
Thank you, Scott. That was great to hear the story, the background, all the different things. It all sounded great. So looking back, what could you tell yourself in, somewhere along the journey that you might have done differently? What were maybe some of the mistakes you made that you look back and you say, if I'd just done it this way, it might have gone a little bit better?
There were plenty. So you hear a story like ours that just shared, and you just have to know there were so many things that didn't go right. And actually, in many ways, culture really comes to light when things aren't going so well. It's almost like you're kind of investing in the culture bank or in your people bank when times are going well, so they'll be with you when times aren't going well. And we made so many mistakes. I was a first-time software entrepreneur, and clearly, I didn't know what I didn't know. We didn't hire QA quick enough. We didn't hire product managers fast enough. I didn't even know what the discipline of product management meant. We had an outage that took us down for the entire weekend that we barely recovered from. In 2007, we filed to go public, and then the financial crisis hit in early 2008, and we were stuck. We literally were stuck on file for all of calendar 2008. We had all the burden of being a public company, including the quiet period, and none of the benefits, including new capital or the halo you get of actually going public. So I think all my learnings along the way were you have to hire remarkable people that have experience you don't have, and then the more your team is committed to you and the culture, the more they're going to help you and stick with you when things aren't going so well.
Yeah, that's great. And looking back too, I mentioned in the introduction, you took very little venture capital to get to that point. You took more after that fact when you chose not to go public and wait to go public. Why did you do that? Why did you just only take $6 million kind of from the 2000 to the 2009 period? And might you do that differently and consider more venture capital? What are your thoughts? You only took the $6 million.
Right. I think if I was starting a company today, I would put more capital to work. The reason we didn't was really kind of the necessary evil of not being able to raise capital. Starting the company in the early 2000s when capital was scarce, we had no track record. Many investors that we spoke with didn't think there was an opportunity that was big enough. One of the early venture investors I met with said, I can't imagine this will ever be more than about a $2 or $3 million a year business. I think it's more of a lifestyle business. And this year, inside of Salesforce, the Marketing Cloud will be north of $1 billion in revenue. So, investors, we always don't get it right, nor do entrepreneurs. But I think a lot of it, Stacy, and it was a blessing for us, was that we didn't have access to capital. And as a result, we had to be very scrappy and be kind of ruthless prioritizers of everything we do. And then later, we saw the opportunity to be a category leader, and that was the right time for us to raise capital.
Right, so that brings up a good question. So what advice would you have for everyone in the audience of how to work with investors? And I'll specifically say in Silicon Valley, because that's where a bulk of the venture capital industry is, though there are other places too. What advice might you have for how to access that better in an easier way, particularly for a company in Atlanta, perhaps?
Yeah, my advice, and some of this came to light in our breakfast at the chamber this morning, is build relationships. This is really a relationship business, and my advice to entrepreneurs would be, build relationships a year or two before you need them, before you need to raise capital. It's important to have relationships in place. It's important for the venture firms to be able to get to know you and watch your company performance over a period of time. It's almost impossible to meet a venture firm and investors for the first time in close proximity to when you need to raise capital. That rarely ever happens. So I think it's back to that thinking ahead, building relationships, and then executing, proving that you can do what you said you do and maybe even a little bit better. I think that's important. And then next It's about surrounding yourself with great people that you want to work with and complement you and you think can really add value to your business. You're with investors forever. It's a marriage that stays with you for a long, long time. So it's just as important that you get to know the investor and the partner in particular who's going to be working with you as it is for them to get to know you. And I think sometimes entrepreneurs forget that. You should be doing reference calls and reference checks.
Absolutely.
You should be really, really selective because those investors are going to be a very, very important part of your future and your board. I was so fortunate to have an incredible group of investors who became friends and advisors and were just absolutely integral to everything we did. And it can work remarkably well when you get it right.
Yeah, so switching gears on that, I completely agree with that. Switching gears on that, so to high alpha, you're now, as people say, you've moved a bit over to the dark side of investing. That's what people kind of say is in venture capital, although you're still incubating these companies. But how is it different from your experience as being an entrepreneur?
It is a lot different, and I'm back on the early part of the learning curve, which is really, really fun. And in our model, we do get a sampling of starting, operating, and hiring, but also investing. And I'm on a brand new journey, of investing. And I try to learn as much as I can from experts. I've been getting to know, Brad Feld and going back to Kobe and Stacy and so many of the venture investors I know to try to kind of learn this new art. And then also I would say I rely on a lot of my instincts of what I look for in entrepreneurs, how I think about culture, how I think about categories and growth. So, it's a mix, but I'm really enjoying it. But it's a mix of learning and then kind of, leaning on your own set of experiences.
Right. And so high alphas and ExactTarget's impact on Indianapolis. Can you talk a bit more about that in terms of, the companies that have come out of it, both through high alpha and whatnot, and just sort of the impact that it's had on Indianapolis and the environment there?
I'd be happy to. I think there are some common characteristics in Indianapolis to what you see here in Atlanta today. In Atlanta, you're on even a much bigger scale than we are in Indy. This event is absolutely remarkable, but there's a feeling that, we're all in this together and we're cheering each other on and we're helpful. And, a rising tide lifts all boats. And we want each other to win and succeed. There's that kind of helpfulness that is really special in Indy. And along our journey building the company, I really did feel like I was, kind of sitting on the shoulders of the community, cheering us on to create this new tech sector and create a lot of high-tech jobs and help transform the city and the state from manufacturing and agriculture to tech. So when you feel like you have a higher calling, or you're on a higher mission, and you're doing something that's being celebrated by the community, that's incredibly motivating. And now that Salesforce is helping to cement that legacy going forward, it's even more exciting about what we can accomplish going forward.
Yeah. And one story I'd like to highlight that Scott was instrumental in helping was for all the years that we were investors in ExactTarget, Scott had been working with United Airlines to try to get the direct flight from SFO to the Indianapolis airport. And he was fighting. I think you were offering to say, hey, we'll guarantee a certain number of seats. And you were just trying to get it once or twice a week or something like that. Finally, when Salesforce acquired ExactTarget, you got your direct flight to SFO, which was great for us investors. But I think that shows you to the level that you were going to, that you realized that, by getting that direct flight, it would make it easier for Silicon Valley entrepreneurs to come out, because everybody would kind of say, oh, that stopover in Chicago, it kills me. So, I think that helps open the doors. It sounds like it's a small thing, but it actually probably had a significant impact. I don't know if you can share more on that story.
It was great. Connectivity, I think, is everything, in smaller markets, outside of the Bay Area, outside the coast. And it seems very, very trivial, but that connectivity and those nonstop flights to San Francisco became really, really important to our community. Sometimes I think that might be my biggest legacy in Indianapolis is that darn nonstop flight, even more than ExactTarget or anything else we've done, because I literally have people stopping me on the street like, hey, thumbs up, I love that nonstop flight. I just took it last week to go to the wine country or head out to the Bay Area. So that's really kind of a neat thing. But connectivity, kind of in every sense of the word, is what helps these younger, earlier stage tech communities really gain traction.
Yeah, in Atlanta, you guys have one of the largest airports in the world, so you will not be.
You guys have that covered.
Yeah, you have that covered, so it's okay.
All right, Stacy, can I turn the table on you?
Sure.
Okay, so I was shared from the Venture Atlanta team that I could switch the table and ask Stacy a few questions. We've got 5 minutes left, so let's go ahead and do that.
All right, go for it.
So Stacy, you've had a tremendous amount of success in marketing technology and SaaS in particular. Vitu right here in Atlanta was amazing. Perhaps you could kind of share what are the common ingredients or characteristics across those kind of 4 or 5 marketing tech companies that broke out and won their categories?
Sure. I mean, I think you covered quite a few of them. So, I mean, I'll highlight just some of the companies. We're in ExactTarget, Vitu, Omniture, HubSpot. We've got another company, Demandbase. These are all in the marketing tech landscape. And one of the interesting things, I told this story, was Omniture was an investment we made in 2005. And Omniture just introduced me. Hey, Stacy, I want the CEO there, Josh James, said, Stacy, I want you to meet our best partner, great entrepreneur. Here's Scott Dorsey. So it shows you that connectivity that you were saying. One thing leads to another good thing, and those were 2 incredible outcomes. But one of the things that you highlighted in your talk, when I look at the companies, they all had a maniacal focus on culture. Even in fact, a couple of them also had, HubSpot was also orange.
Right.
Although they didn't brand it as orange. But a maniacal focus on culture, very visionary in thinking about where they're going to be next. I mean, I shared this at the breakfast, so sorry if it's somewhat repetitive, but Josh James at Omniture laid out back in 2004 a vision of where he saw analytics and how it was going to fit in. And Adobe, which acquired Omniture many, many years later, is still executing on that vision. So being able to think far ahead, like you had highlighted. So very similar in that. The other, and this is just entrepreneurs in general, CEOs, knowing where your weaknesses are, knowing where to hire people to complement you is just been key. When I look at these successful teams, oftentimes there was a core original team that was there, and then they augmented over time with great executives and even kept those people who may not have had the skills and perhaps even found other roles or other people came in to augment them. But there was this continuity of a good, solid exec team that I saw. So those were some of the attributes, but culture was a huge factor.
Yeah, I love that, Stacy. So let's take that a step further. What advice would you have for entrepreneurs in the audience that are kind of making that big pitch? Maybe they've had a warm intro. Hopefully there's been a bit of a relationship. They come in and they kind of get to pitch to your team. What advice do you have for that kind of meeting or that interaction and any follow-up after?
Right. I mean, I think enthusiasm is key. Understanding where the idea came from and why the entrepreneur is doing what they're doing. But also, and we said this again this morning, also just, it's okay to say you don't know something. I think there's nothing better than an entrepreneur saying they don't know something. And then it's even better if a couple of days later you get a follow-up where they say, yes, I looked into that question that you have, and here's what I think about it. You don't need to have all the answers out of the gate because that's part of building that relationship. One of the things I'm always looking for with entrepreneurs is seeing if I can work well with them and that I can build some kind of rapport and have that relationship going forward. Because sometimes you can be viewed as the big ugly venture capitalist who's going to try to replace me and take my job away. And I want the opposite of that. I'm on your side. I want you to be successful. I want to help you win as much as I possibly can. So, I mean, those are some of the things that you trying to look for early on.
One topic I was thinking about this morning, I'd be curious to get your take on it, Stacy, is how do you observe the dynamic between CEO and their leadership team? Either during that meeting or subsequently. I find that's an area we can learn a lot about the individual and the culture when you really see them together and you kind of analyze the chemistry across leaders.
Right. So you're looking at that, but actually one of my favorite things that happens, which might sound a little counter to that, is I love it when the CEO, when you're meeting the team, usually this might be deeper in diligence, you're going to the place where the company is and you're meeting the broader team. There's nothing better than when actually the CEO leaves the room. And that means that the CEO really trusts their team and really believes in them and doesn't feel the need to sit there and micromanage every step of the diligence process. They're coming in and sort of being the orchestrator of it, but they're like, hey, you're here to meet my head of sales or my head of engineering. I'll let you guys talk and I'm going to leave. The ones that we do pick up on the ones who are sitting through it the whole way and they're piling on at every comment. It's actually a little bit worrisome because then you feel like, wait, this person's not trusting their team. And similar in a board setting, some of the best companies I've seen, and you did this, where you might do an initial part of your board, but then your team is really presenting to the board, each of the functional areas, and it's not all being managed by the CEO, and I think that's phenomenal.
That's awesome. How about one last question, Stacy? So the title of my talk was Building Category Leaders in SaaS, and I think that's where I'd like to go with the last question. Stacy, maybe share about how you and the firm Scale think about category leaders, building category leaders, what it takes, and then what the rewards are on the other side.
Right. I mean, it's a very important thing that we're looking at, particularly if you're coming in a B or C round, is what is the ability of this company to be able to sort of win the market? In Scott's case, communication with customers. I say that broadly speaking because sometimes people put you in the email marketing category, but you were so much more than that. There was a period of time, maybe 10 years or so ago, where spending was one of the ways to get there. I think now you've got to do more than just spend, because I think people have learned that playbook of raise a lot of venture capital money and then spend like a crazy person. I think what I would like to say is it's thoughtful spend. I mean, you have to be aggressive, you have to be bold. I mean, Kyle from Sales Loss has been mentioned before, but I love what he did at Dreamforce. Hard to rise above the noise. A couple of years ago, he had a sort of a guerrilla campaign, Benioff 2020 for president. And I remember seeing it on the street going, what is going on? What is this? But it was incredible because everybody had asked about it and then everybody hit the landing page. So sometimes you got to be a little crazy and do something that's out there to sort of rise above the noise. Because it's a crowded landscape and you need to sort of differentiate themselves. But I think all the things that you highlighted as what makes a good SaaS leader, you continue on those things and then be smart about how you spend your, the venture capital that you raise. I like to call it smart spend. Don't just be wasteful on it. And then, do something a little bit crazy out there to get noticed.
Awesome. With that, it's been a huge honor being with you today. How about a big round of applause for Stacy and all of you?
Scott, thank you.